And then we're also just going to talk a little bit about just some practicals of things to keep in mind, some differences between leading a virtual meeting and leading one that's in person. Why don't we go ahead and begin with a prayer, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Hans, who's going to start us off this morning. Let's go ahead and pray. Father, thank you so much for this time that we have together and the ability that we have to meet during this time. And even though we haven't seen each other in person, I'm so grateful that we have the technology to see each other's faces, to see one another's expressions. And while it certainly is not the same, Father, it's so much better than just texting or a phone. And I do pray that you use this time to help us be more effective in connecting to more people all around the church and outside the church. I pray that this video can be used by others to help train them and how to do this as well. And I pray that we can make the most of this time while we cannot meet together. I love you so much, God. It's in your son's name that I pray. Amen. Amen. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Hans.
Amen. Well, welcome. And we're going to just get right into it. And all of this is going to be recorded. So if you want to watch it later, you totally can. But I want to start out with a video here showing the benefits of small groups, regardless of your age and where you're at.
My discipleship group is a very unique group. We meet online, 8 o'clock on Sunday night. We meet in our pajamas. We have our coffee and we chat and we share and we pray and we do our Bible study. In our little group, we have one lady who lives in Washington, D.C., and she is so on fire for the Lord that she even is exciting me at a new level as the leader. And we are just growing and growing in the Lord through her excitement for wanting to share Jesus with the people that she comes in contact with. What makes me really excited about the discipleship groups online is that I'm getting to meet new people and I'm getting to do it from home. My goal is for everyone that I disciple, as they grow and get more comfortable in their faith and in their walk, that they'll be able to invite their friends and family into a group that they can have as their own discipleship group. And then they can invite other people, and that's how this whole thing works. And growing the family of God is through discipleship. Where does the boldness come that I have to work on a computer and reach out in chat hosting and in small groups or discipleship groups? It comes from God, because I only know enough to be dangerous on a computer. And my willingness to say, Lord, there is a group of people out there that maybe this is the only way they're ever going to know about your son, Jesus, that I have to tell God, yes, I will go on the computer and I'll figure it out and I'll do it.
Well, I loved her line of that fear of the computer and just dangerous enough to get online. But ultimately, these groups that we have, either online or in person, are all about connecting with people and connecting people to God and connecting people to God's church. And we can do that online, we can do that in person, but I think it often takes more than just meeting together once a week. It means either in person or online, that these groups, we need consistent connection throughout the week to be able to do that. You know, in Acts chapter 2:46, it says every day they continue to meet in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts. And you go, man, that's the one thing we're kind of eager to do. And in this time of physical distancing and these stay-at-home orders, we got a few suggestions of how to help connect with people consistently that are in your group or in a group that you're wanting to start. And so one of the things that you can do is just having a texting group. So here's some options. And again, we're going to have all these notes available afterwards. It's going to be on the website under blog, and you can find all these things from today's class. But GroupMe or WhatsApp or Slack or Facebook groups, YouVersion Bible app is a great way to do a Bible study together during the week. And it gives you a comment section at the end, and so it gives you a reminder, it gives you a thought, it gives you an extra touch point. And YouVersion just added another piece to their app where you can put in prayer requests. And I know some of you figured that out because I've gotten a few prayer requests from some of you. Tim sent me one this last week as well. And so which is the best? I don't really care. I'm platform agnostic. I don't care which one you use, but use something. I think it'll help, and it'll help people take that next step in meeting in an online group or in your group after this is all done in real life. And so what are some options to do that? So you can use Zoom. That's what we're using right here. And it seems to work pretty well. One article I read said it passes the grandma test, meaning you can call in and use a phone number. You can easily click one button. And at the end of this, we'll show how to do that, where you can just set up a meeting and send that link out and get with one button into a meeting without having to download an app. And so last night we had 1,000 singles in a Zoom meeting. It was totally fun and totally chaotic, but people just love being able to see each other and be able to be connected. And so Zoom, there is a cost to it. There's a free version, but you're limited to 40 minutes and 100 people, which most of our groups are probably not going to be that big. But the paid version is only $15. And there's no contract. And I get to thinking that's even cheaper than probably what you would spend on chips and salsa. And so it's a decent price per month, no contract, and you can cancel at any time. Talkio is free. I've heard some good things about it. Heard it's had some stability issues, but if you're budget conscious. The other thing is Google Hangouts, or it's actually Google Meets now, which used to be Google Hangouts. Similar to Zoom, but you do have to have a Google account. So you have to have a Gmail account to be able to use that. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And so that does make it difficult for some people. And so here's some pointers on how to have a great video call. Lighting is super important. If you scroll through, some of the different people, sometimes you can see where there's a bright light behind them and it's really dark in front of them. So you want to have just a simple light in front of you. Like a floor lamp often is enough. Don't sit in front of a window because that light coming behind will kind of blow out the camera. And then try and find the quietest place in your house, preferably maybe away from the kids and the dog. If there's a bunch of background noise, it's really difficult. And then level your camera so it's pointing at your face. It's a little distracting when I'm, counting nose hairs on somebody when their camera's down on the ground and, looking up in there. And then log in so you can learn how to use your microphone and camera beforehand, because you don't want to be trying to figure that out just as you're going there. And some great things while you're in the meeting, use the mute and unmute function. We muted everybody as they came in, because as everybody's coming in and they're trying to figure themselves out and what's working or not, it gets a little pandemonium. And so just use that function, and then encourage people to download it beforehand. Don't wait until the end. And if you go, I really want to up my game, if you're kind of a techophile, you can get some of these, a microphone or a camera or a light ring that will improve that video call drastically. And then I'm going to include this graphic that you can send out to your people if you want to use Zoom. That goes through, you click on the link that you're going to email them. If you don't have Zoom, you can download it, or you can use it on the web. It does give some better functionality if you download the app. It just takes a little bit of time and be able to set up, and then you join with your computer audio, allow that camera access, and then just say hi. It should be it. It really is super simple and is a fun way of being able to get connected and be able to see each other and interact with each other at a time where it's really, I think people are really starving for that and really want it so badly. And so people go, does it have to be different than a normal group? It doesn't have to be, but it can be. And so, I think here's a possible outline to just make it very simple. Just welcome everybody, kind of warm up the group with a question. If the paid version, you can do a poll. So you can even just ask that where not everybody is. But if it's a small group, 10 or 15 people, you can let it get a response from everybody. And then you can watch a study. We've got some available that we're going to talk about here in a minute, or you can share one of your own thoughts. On the blog page from a couple weeks ago in the Northwest, we taught people how to do the simple, reproducible Bible discussion. And it's this discovery Bible method. It's a very simple way to kind of dig into the scriptures and help people own the scriptures and apply them to their lives. And so those notes will be available as well. And then talking about prayer requests, what needs do they have? And then just ending with a prayer together. So it doesn't need to be this big, long time together, but I think being able to connect and being able to be there and really connecting with our groups at a time where people really need it. So as a church, we've got membership to this Right Now Media, and it's the Netflix of Christian Bible studies. If you want to get it, you go to the Denver Church of Christ website and just click on that button there that's circled Right Now Media, and that will take you over to a sign up there. Now you have to sign up. I don't have the password. There's not one password for the whole church. It's individual for each people. And there's all kinds of different Bible studies there that you can use that are just a great way of being able to connect. And so what I want to do right now is just show you briefly so that you can download this later, so that you can go through and if you're having a hard time, watch it step by step. So I'm going to share a little bit different screen here and just show you on how to go to a meeting. So if you go to zoom.us, and if you don't have it downloaded yet, you can go up in here and sign up. I already do, so I'm going to go to my account, and here's my wife, and if it's, so my wife is telling me here, if your screen, if you can't see it, let me move it over. If you have the pictures on the right hand side, you can minimize those. Like if you, all the people, if you click on one of those people, there's a little minus button, so you can make it smaller and see that with everybody that's there. So you're going to go into this, and I can just click this button here that says schedule a meeting, and you can name that meeting whatever you want. Our awesome Bible study. And yeah, I spelled awesome wrong, and I'm a little bit far away, so I can't read it. Oh goodness. You know, it's really embarrassing when you do some of this. Okay. You can, I have a template in there, but you can just select the time. So we're going to meet on Tuesday nights, and we're going to meet in the afternoon or evening. Let's say we're gonna start at 8 o'clock. Goodness, hit the wrong button. So we're gonna start, we'll just say 3 p.m. So it's there. It's gonna be 1 hour, and it doesn't have to be, and if it goes longer, it's okay. I wouldn't do registration because then they have to fill it out. Here you can select if they're gonna do video or not. And then if you enable join before host, they can come into the room before you're there. So if it's just your small group, I would totally do that, because then if you're not there right on time, they can come in and they can be there. And if you're going to do it every week, you hit that reoccurring meeting weekly, so that you can set that up and have it all ready to go. And then you just hit save. And right here is this link, and you can copy and paste that and just send it over to them, and they'll do that. If you click here, it gives the longer invitation, and it gives you phone numbers to call in, tells everybody what time those meetings are going to be. And again, all they have to do is click this link, and they can go straight to it. If they call in, they have to put in an ID, the meeting ID. If you have a smartphone, you can click this one tap, and it has a colon in there so that it pauses and you can get on the meeting. And so it's a great way to be able to just get in there, be in the meeting, and be together and make it happen. Okay, Chris, why don't you share, and we'll come back and go through some of the controls here in a second.
So what we'll have is we'll have some time at the very end. So if you have any questions, be prepared with your questions. You can raise your hands in the chat function. We'll know that you have a question then, and then we'll unmute you so you can ask your question. So I just wanted to go over a little bit, one of the goals of being able to do these small groups remotely is that they're effective. And I think there are some differences between leading a virtual group and doing one live that we should probably keep in mind. And then there's just some things that you should always keep in mind, whether you're doing it live or in a virtual small group. And so I think the first thing is, you got to make sure that the technology is not a distraction, during your time together. And Hans alluded to this, but this means that, as a leader, it is important for you to get familiar with the medium that you're using. So in this case, if it's Zoom, do some practice calls, get some other people on the call with you and practice using the functionality, and then also practice teaching other people how to use it. So for instance, if you're going to use something like the raising hand functionality, you got to be able to tell people how to do that. And so you want to practice teaching it. So even if you just have your family all in different rooms of the house and you do a call together, and then you can practice teaching them how to do that, you want to get familiar with telling people how to use the technology. I think also there's little things, and Hans alluded to this with the lighting and the sound. It sounds like trivial details, but they really can become so distracting that some people that they can't listen anymore. So if you've got background noise, for instance, if you're not using a headphone and you just have the speaker open, it's amazing the sounds your computer can pick up that everybody else can hear. So if you've got a child 2 rooms over watching television, and then all of a sudden, it doesn't even have to be a child, it could be your teenager, and they're just watching a show, and let's just say in that show they happen to drop a swear word in the show, that could come through your call. And so it's really important to make sure that you've got a good place to do this. It's also important to teach people to mute themselves. And you'll notice we've all forcibly muted you, because we know that there are some of you out there who have not mastered the kind of the details of this, and there would be all sorts of sounds coming through: chewing, slurping, televisions. There's become a very famous video of someone who was on Zoom who totally forgot that people could see them, and they went to the bathroom with the laptop on their lap, and so these are the types of things you just want to get familiar with. All right. And so take your time. So make sure there's no background noise, the lighting, you don't want to be like a dark silhouette, like you're being interrogated by the CIA or something like that. So all of that, you want to take a little bit of time just to get familiar with the technology so that it's not a distraction. Okay. So I think the second thing is, I don't think it's bad to have a little decorum while you're on these calls. I think one of the best parts is, like, you could be wearing Bermuda shorts right now and nobody would know, and that's great. You could be wearing your fuzzy bunny slippers and it's great. Nobody sees that. On the other hand, if you are leading a meeting, it's great to set it up with some amount of decorum. So, we've joked at times about being in your pajamas, and that's great if nobody sees you. But if people are seeing you, you don't want this to be so casual that people don't care or people aren't focused. And so as the leader, you don't want to be eating while you're talking. You don't want to be distracted or playing video games while this stuff is going on. So, having a little bit of decorum while you're leading the meeting, I think is also important. Now, this next thing is always important, even if you're live, but I think it's probably even more so virtually, because so much can get lost in these virtual meetings, much more so than when you're live. But you have to speak more slowly if you're leading a group during these times. Probably speaking almost uncomfortably slowly, because when you're live, if you don't catch something, you can easily just whisper to the person next to you, "Hey, what did they just say?" And that happens all the time. It probably happens more often than we realize. But when you're in these settings, there's no one to ask. And so you, as the leader, you have to make sure that you speak much more slowly than you typically would. You also want to speak more loudly and more clearly. And again, that just has to do with practice, but you're going to have to focus on it even more in these virtual settings, because there's no one else around your listeners to ask what you just said. And oftentimes, especially if you're muting everybody, there's no way to know that you just said something that people didn't understand. So you have to take more time to speak more clearly, more loudly, more slowly. Now, this next part is one of the uncomfortable parts of a virtual meeting. All right, so let's say you're in your Bible talk, you got 10 people, everybody's unmuted, and you just asked a discussion question. All right. You are going to have to allow for more silence to occur between the moment you ask the question and the moment people answer the question. And some of us are very uncomfortable with silences. And we're going to rush in to rescue everybody and answer our own question. And we can do this even in live moments as well. But in virtual moments, nobody can look at each other and read body language. No one can see who's about to speak next. And so there's just a longer duration of time that it takes for people to sometimes answer these discussion type questions in these virtual settings. And so you're going to have a greater tolerance for silence. And don't rescue your group. Just wait until someone finally offers to answer the question. Don't rush in and answer it, or you're going to ruin the discussion itself. Over time, your group will get better at responding more quickly, but it's never going to be as fast as it is live. So you're going to have to be more comfortable with more silence while you're having discussions in virtual settings. Now, I have found that one way to overcome this is to have some planted responders. Okay, so if you're going to have a discussion group, just let a couple people know some of the questions that you're going to ask. Hey, I'm going to ask this question. Can you think about an answer for this so that when I ask it, we have someone who's ready to answer. We can kind of get the ball rolling. And so, don't be afraid to prepare some people for some of the questions that you're going to ask so that people have time to think about some of your answers. This is good to do anyway, but it's even more so important to do in these virtual settings. And then in the end, if the silence has gotten too long, and if you forgot to get planted answers, call on somebody. Don't answer it yourself. Just pick a person who is not going to be overly flustered by this, and call on someone and force someone to answer. It always happens in every single group. As soon as one person starts to talk, everybody else starts to come up with ideas and they want to start answering. Don't answer it yourself, call on someone. Now, I have found that in these virtual settings, you're going to have to be overly expressive. All right. And again, just like you have to be, overly loud and overly slow, you have to be overly expressive because people can't see your body language the same way. And so they can't tell. You could come across annoyed, or you could come across as stressed out if you are not more expressive with smiling. And, if someone says something good, be overly complimentary, just be overly expressive during this time, because nothing is going to come through the way that you think it is. All right. And so you want to make sure that people are interpreting what you're intending. Okay. So be a little bit more expressive than you normally are. And you may feel a little bit like a performer or a clown, but that's okay. You'll get the message across more clearly. And then finally, I think this is important when you're doing a meeting online. I don't know why, but for some reason, emotionally, it feels like the meetings are twice as long as they are live. And again, it's just because there's kind of a lack of stimulus, I think. So I think it's really important at the beginning of the meeting to tell people what you're doing, when you're going to do it, and how long it's going to last. I think a light at the end of the tunnel for almost all meetings is important for people, but even more so for these virtual meetings. So stick to your time, let them know how long it's going to take, let them know exactly what's going to happen during the meeting so that they know what to expect. Because for whatever reason, and this is, I think you're starting to see more and more articles about this, people get worn out by these virtual calls more so than sometimes by these live meetings. And so it's important for people to understand what's coming in front of them, and it just kind of helps them psychologically. So those are just some of the practicals I had for us to keep in mind during these virtual meetings. Now, Hans, can I turn it over to you? Do you have something else that you were wanting to show before we got onto the question and answer?
So what I'll do is I'll tie a video in at the end of this that has a recording that just kind of shows some of the functionality of some of these things around here. So how are we doing questions? Do we want to pick some?
All right. So if you have a question, you can just go ahead and raise your hands. And the way that you do that is at the very bottom of your screen, there's going to be a bar with some options there. And there's one that says participants. And if you click on that, there should be a feature that looks like a hand like this, and that will raise your hand and it'll put you to the top of our participants list so that we know that you have a question. Did I explain that accurately, Hans?
Yeah, that's very good.
All right. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand right now. I think there was a question that we already knew about translation. Do you know what that question was, guys?
Oh, let's go over to Carrie first, and then
Okay.
we'll answer that question. So Carrie Massey, I'm unmuting you, and then you can share.
Can you show us how to break into rooms?
Yeah, that's super simple. You do need a paid account on that one, and so I will. Let me pull up that picture here in just a second. But along the bottom, I'll pull that up in a second. So I'm going to mute you again, Carrie. And then I know one of the questions was about translation. And so somebody saw the button there where it said translation. And what that does is you have to have a translator available. They can log in and they have the ability to translate. So you can then select that language and translate. So we've done that for midweeks. We haven't been able to do that for every meeting because we need somebody who's available to be able to do that. So here we go. I got a semi helpful solution on this. And then Chris, if you want to raise somebody else's hand, that'd be great.
So with Carrie and the breaking out into rooms, do we need to wait before we answer that question, Hans?
I'm going to show
kind
of right now. So on there, I love that that where it picked to stop was probably one of the most attractive looking faces of Chris that I've seen.
That's not a good stoppage point.
Seems like a good stoppage point. So you can see the red dot. So here's our functionality across the bottom. So this is mute and unmute yourself. This is start and stop your own video. You can click this invite button to invite people in. So that would pop up and you can get the code right there. This manage participants brings up a window that then I can mute all or unmute all people. This polling is asking questions that you can have set up beforehand. And then share screen, which is where you can show the videos. Chat is the chat feature, which a bunch of you have figured out. And then this pause recording. So if you want to record the lesson, you can do that. And then right here is breakout rooms. And I'll make an entire kind of a separate video, just a 2-minute piece on that. But ultimately, all you do is you click that button, and then it says you've got 12 people. We suggest 3 rooms, and it divides those people, 4 people per room. Or if you go, no, I want 4 rooms and I want 3 people in it, you can have that functionality, and then you can decide and assign people. This is that interpretation button that they were talking about, and that only works when we've got an interpreter available, and that's turned on, and then there's somebody to be able to do that. So hopefully that answers your question in some way. The paid version is the $15 a month. So that's all it costs. It's very affordable, and it's no contract. So you can do it for 1 month and then cancel, and it works out well that way. So Heather Hageman, let's see. Heather has a question. Let's unmute Heather, and you can ask that question, Heather.
It's actually Jeff.
Oh, hey, Jeff.
Hi. You hear me?
I can hear you.
My question was time. I appreciated all the advice about how it feels like a longer meeting. Normally our Bible talks for about an hour. Are we thinking 45 minutes then? Or what's your suggestion, just small group time limit?
Can you guys hear me? My computer is freezing up on me, but if you guys can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I think the time period really depends upon the group and really depends on the person speaking. You just might want to get honest feedback about how people feel about the meeting. I think more importantly, it's just important for people to know what's about to happen. The meeting feels longer sometimes when they don't know there's an end time. When they can see an end time to it, all of a sudden it feels like, okay, I know how much time I have, and it's more of a psychological thing. And so I think part of this is making sure that there's interaction. The more interaction there is, the shorter the meeting feels. And so I don't necessarily think you have to shorten your meetings unless people tell you that it would be more helpful for them to shorten the meeting. I think it's just really important that they understand what's happening in the meeting and how long it's going to take, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Yeah, Great question. And I think it is going to be different for each group. So here's a couple questions that people texted in. How do you set up to have more than one presenter? So underneath share screen, as the host, it gives you the option to let anyone share or just the host share. Do all the icons show up if you're the host? They do. So because I'm the host, I could see those extra things like manage participants. Yours just says participants. You won't have the polling, you won't have the start and stop recording, you won't have the breakout rooms. You'll have all of those if you have the paid account. And so, yeah. Is there any other questions that people have? And if not, we can stick around for a little bit afterwards and have some Q&A. We wanted to keep this really brief, one for the video, and then two, just so that it's easy to come back and use it again. And so happy to take any other questions or stick around for a little while if people have those. So if you have, let's see, Michelle Brown has a question. All right, Michelle, just unmuted you.
Great. Hi, guys. I just wanted to give you the perspective from a Bible Talk member. Since most of you are Bible Talk leaders, last night, Barry Underwood, Barry had done a semi-PowerPoint. So that way on the screen, he would ask the question and the PowerPoint came up. So that way it kind of gave you time to figure out the technology. You knew what the question was. Everybody was at the same point, so you didn't have to worry about did everybody hear it, etc. So that was phenomenal. And the hour and 15 minutes that he said at first seemed a lot, but I think we actually went a half hour over because we really enjoyed it. So I just wanted to give you that encouragement that I don't think the time thing is that big a deal. I was worried on being on a meeting after work for an hour and a half on a Friday, and next thing I knew, we were a half hour longer. So just some encouragement from your point of view. Thank you so much for doing this for us and keeping us connected. That's all.
That's a great perspective and such a great idea. You know, very simple to put in some of those points, or even you can copy and paste it into the text of the chat if that is easier for you. And so that's a good option for sure. Somebody said you might check with your job or with CU Denver, or if you're a student. I know my daughter just got full pro access for a year because they're doing online questions. And I do believe that the poll option is only for the paid $15 account, but I could be wrong on that. I don't know if anybody else knows the answer to that. So any other questions? If you hit participants and raise your hand, that reactions too. So reactions is fun. So if you ask somebody, hey, is everybody okay with that? Thumbs up works pretty well. The Denver Church of Christ does not have accounts that can be shared. So we talked about doing that. And what happens if you share an account is if one is started and somebody else gets on that same account, it boots the second or the first person off. And so we couldn't figure out a good way to do that in a helpful dynamic, you know, so we're using kind of one account to do the midweeks or some of those other things that we're doing, but we don't have accounts that we think could figure out a good way to make that work for Bible Talk leaders. Great question. The Bates have a question. All right, I'm going to unmute the Bates and hear from them. What's your question?
My question is for both our midweek, our small groups, and for church as a whole using the Zoom meetings. Things like pre-recorded music videos and any sort of media on that. What sort of rights, copyrights do we have to worry about, or do we have blankets used for these Zoom meetings?
Okay, that's a great question. From my understanding, for using it on a Zoom meeting, you're totally fine being able to share that. Right now, media has encouraged us to do this. That they're just kind of an online functionality group publishing where we get our children's ministry videos. And oh, by the way, if you have kids or you know anybody who has kids, tomorrow morning from 10 to 10:30, we're going to have kids church. And so have some songs together, a short little lesson and a Bible teaching there. It's going to be a great time for them. So I encourage you, send your kids in there. But they give us permission to show those videos. And then for midweeks in our church services, there's a company called CCLI that we have a streaming license through to be able to stream that content that we already have. that we have purchased or have the rights to. So it's a good question. So there is some issues there with like YouTube. Sometimes if it's a copyrighted thing and it's saved on YouTube, they just make it where you can't make any money off of that video, but other people can. So good question for sure. All right. Any other thoughts or any other questions? All right. Well, if there's no other questions, I think we're going to end the meeting officially. We'll stop the recording. And if anybody has any other questions that wants to come in and stay, happy to do that. You can send a message in the chat or send me a message privately. But if you're from one of our other sister churches, God bless you. Hope this helps. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me personally. Happy to help in any way we can. But have a great day, everybody. And I'll stick around if anybody has any questions for about a half an hour or so. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a little instruction here on how to host a meeting. So you're going to go to your account and go to meetings, and we're going to schedule a meeting. And we're going to do it for our awesome Bible study. And we're going to meet on Tuesday nights, and we're going to plan on being all together there at 7 o'clock. We'll plan on meeting for about an hour, and it can go longer, it can go shorter, but that's where it's going to be. And we're going to want to do this every week. And we're planning on doing that for the next 5 weeks, let's say. And so we're going to do that. We're not going to require registration, although if you're wanting to post it in Nextdoor or something like that, I would highly encourage you to require a registration. That way there's an email and a password, and if you have to remove somebody, they can't just log back in. And you can decide if you want the host video on or participant video on. I do this where it's both, so that people can use their computer audio or their telephone audio. And I like to enable join before host when it's a group of people that I know, so that they can come in and I don't have to be there when I'm there. If it's going to be a big group, I'll mute participants on entry rather than doing that where they can just unmute themselves. And if they register, you can pre-assign these breakout rooms. So I'm just going to click save. And then here's my meeting URL. And I can text, I can email, I can send that to whoever. They just have to, with one button, get into that meeting and they can click in there. So let's pretend that this meeting right here that we're recording right now for this training purposes is just such a meeting. So in this meeting, I can go in here to manage participants, and my participants pop up, and I can see this, Zoom training. I can see myself as the host, and I can go in here and I go, okay, I want to chat with this person, or they're being problematic. I'm going to remove them. So if I'm planning on leading with them and want them to help me, I can use this to make them a co-host. So as well, there's other options then across here. I can obviously mute myself. And one great feature in here that is helpful for everybody to understand is this test speakers and microphone. So if you can hear that in your microphone, you're doing well. And then it asks you to speak and then pause. So it plays it back to you, so you know if you have good sound through your headphones or through your speakers, then good sound through the audio. And then if you forgot to invite somebody to the meeting, you can go in here, copy that URL, and then text it, email it to them, however they would like. You can go here to this meeting, and there's that URL, and it'll ask them if they want to open it if they've already had Zoom. If not, they can click this button right here that says start from your browser, and they can just use their computer without having to have the account. Under share screen, I can decide what I want to share. And so I can click this and it gives me the different options of what I have available on my computer. If I just want to share my Google Chrome, like if I was logged into Right Now Media and wanted to share that, this is where I would do that. I would open up this page, share that. I'm not going to do that now because of the recording, but what you do want to make sure is that you have this share your computer sound and optimize the screen share for a video clip. When you select both of those, the video is going to come through a lot better for both, for all the participants. So make sure you select both of those if you're going to show that. Then as we just continue across here, one of the questions was, can other people share or just myself? And so here you can decide who can share, just the host or any of the participants. So if they had something that they wrote a quiet time or something and they wanted to share, and so you can set it just to the host or to anyone. And then there's the chat window, so you can bring that up and you can say hey to everybody, and then they can chat back, as well as you can chat privately to anybody that's in the meeting, which is a nice feature if you're wanting to do good news and somebody shares, hey, I've got good news that I want to share, or you want to say, hey, would you mind sharing what you had told me about the other day? Then here's the recording where you can start and stop. And then here's breakout rooms. And we'll come back to that in just a second. Reactions are fun because you can do the, oh, I'm plotting. Or if you say, hey, next week, can we start a half an hour early because we're going to do something else with the grandparents? Everybody can give a thumbs up if that works. So that's kind of helpful. And then as well, there's these reactions that people can give, where you can click yes, you can click no. If you're going too slow, they can say, or going too fast, they slow down, going too fast, and then saying, or hey, I need a break, or I'm away from it. So as a host, then you can clear those things. And as a participant, under participants is where they would raise their hand. So then breakout rooms. So I know there were some questions about these breakout rooms. And so ultimately, because there's just 2 people in this room, I can select 2 rooms. And so I would have 0 to 1 person per room. But it gives me this option up to 50 rooms, and dividing out how many people, it'll tell you right here of how many participants will be in each room. And then manually, when I create those breakout rooms, it will give me this list of breakout rooms, and I can assign those people to a breakout room. I'll hit assign. It gives me the whole list of everybody that's here. Right now, there's only one other person, so it's that Zoom training, and we can do that. And we would assign the person because we said we were going to do it manually, and then I open those rooms. It would then give a notification to each person in the meeting that, hey, the rooms are open, would you like to go? It keeps the host in the main room, but then after those meeting rooms are open, you can jump into any room that you would like. You can reassign people, and you can move people around. You as a host will get a notification if there's a problem in one of those rooms as well. And then here's some advanced things of, you can live stream it for an event. So for our midweeks and different things, we've been using that as well. So I think that's about all there is. If you have other questions or other things, please don't hesitate to reach out. info@denverchurchofchrist.org.